Okay, it's now 1 o'clock, so we're going to get started. Welcome and good afternoon. I'm Lauren Strauss, Scholar in Residence and Director of Undergraduate Studies in American University's Jewish Studies program. And I am also affiliated faculty with the Center for Israel Studies at AU. I'm delighted to welcome you to this second webinar in our series on Israeli authors. This series is sponsored by American University's Center for Israel Studies and is co-sponsored by AU's Jewish Studies program and the Department of Literature at AU. We were able to do this all because of the very generous support of the Knapp Family Foundation, so we're very grateful for that. I especially want to thank the Center for Israel Studies Director, Dr. Michael Brenner. And Michael Brenner really is the one who had the vision to create a lecture series, and I thank him for asking me to organize the series. And also, as always, I'd like to thank the managing director of the center, Laura Cutler, for doing so much work behind the scenes, always to make these programs a reality. We at American University extend a very warm welcome to our global audience across many time zones, which includes friends of American University and of the Center for Israel Studies, alumni and academic colleagues from many institutions, and our own students. I particularly want to welcome students from today from my own class called Voices of Modern Jewish Literature. If you ever miss watching any of these webinars in person in real time, they are available as recordings starting about a day or two after they take place. So already, if you missed the amazing, wonderful webinar last week, where Dr. Brenner interviewed Israeli author David Grossman, that recording is available. And if you're on the center's mailing list, you will get news of the recordings when they become available. And now to introduce our featured author for today's program. Rutu Modan is an illustrator, comics artist, and a professor at the Bezalel Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem. She co-founded the Israeli comics collective Actus, which has won worldwide recognition and was crowned by ID magazine as one of the most influential design groups of 2007. Several times she has received the Israel Museum's Ben Yitzchak Award for children's book illustration. And in 2008, her book Exit Wounds, that's the English title, won the Eisner Award for Best Comic Book. Her graphic novel, The Property, was published in 2013, and it too won an Eisner Award for Best Graphic Novel of 2014. It also won the Special Jury Prize in the International Comics Festival in France and the first prize for Best Book of the Year in Lucca, in the Lucca Comic and Games Festival in Lucca, Italy. In 2013, Rutu Modan, along with Yirmi Pincus, established something called Noah Library, which is an independent publishing house specializing in comics for young children. She has had her comic, graphic novels and her children's books translated into 15 languages. And her last graphic novel, her most recent, I should say, graphic novel, Tunnels, here's the English version, which we're talking about today, has so far been published in Israel, France, Italy, Spain, both in Spanish and Catalan, Germany, and the US. Tunnels has already won the Dudu Geva Award for Best Graphic Novel in Israel. And it was chosen as the official selection of the International Comics Festival in France and has been nominated for the France Television 2022 Public Prize. So that's just the tip of the iceberg so that you understand what a big deal it is that we are so privileged to have Rutu Modan joining us today. So Rutu, welcome you to turn on your camera.
Yeah.
And we will start our conversation.
Entrance of
that. Yeah. And there she is.
Hi.
So really thrilled to see you, and Erev Tov. It is 6 hours later than East Coast time in Israel until you all change your clocks. So I want to start generally with some questions so that our audience really gets to know you and your process, and also your motivations. And then we'll talk about tunnels and your other works. So first, basic overall question: why graphic novels? When did you decide or figure out that this is how you wanted to convey your stories?
Well, to really understand that this is what I want to do, actually, it was quite late. If I compare myself to other artists, because it was only in the academy when I was a student, the Academy of Art in Betzalel. This is because Israel has no comics tradition, and it's more than that. It had no comics when I grew up. There was one Tintin book that was published here, and it didn't succeed. I think it's the only place in the only country in the world that Tintin and Superman weren't successful. So nothing actually was translated. There was a little bit of comics in children magazine, but not enough that I would even understand that it's a medium like literature or drawings. But I did comics before I knew comics exist. I have can I share screen now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I will share. Just want to show something. This is for my childhood. This was when I was in second grade, and there was a war. And maybe this will answer also the question, why graphic novels? I was 7, and there was a war, a very traumatic war, Yom Kippur War in 73. And I grew up in a hospital. I have to explain it maybe. My parents were both doctors, and in a big hospital in the center of Israel, where there was a neighborhood where all the staff were living, and it still exists today. So the doctors and nurses would be close to the hospital. And so actually we were the neighborhood was inside the hospital area, and we were exposed as children to everything that happened in the hospital, including surgeries and I don't know other stuff. And during the war, when soldiers came from they brought sorry. So there's something about. I'm sorry. Are you with me? Sorry, there was some interruption in the line. So during the war, holy helicopters were coming from the battlefield with wounded soldiers, sometimes dead soldiers, and it was just near where the helicopter landed, where exactly where we were playing, and so we saw it. And I wrote this book, or this graphic novel, my first graphic novel maybe, about a war in this imaginary country, and we'll see in the drawing how I was influenced by what I saw. And so for me, I was always drawing as a child, and so for me, drawing was, I think, from a very early age, a way to express myself and to tell story, to express what I see around me. So it was very natural to me when I was exposed during my studies in the art academy, when I exposed to comics as a medium. It didn't take me long to understand that this is what I was looking for. I didn't know it could be a profession. My growing up as a daughter of doctors, of Jewish doctors, I should have said, that believes that only medicine is a real profession.
Right. I did read that most people in your family are medical doctors. When you first put this on the screen, before I really looked closely, my reaction is, oh, how cute. The drawings of a second grader, or whatever grade you said you were in. And then you start looking closer and you realize that it's quite horrifying, the images, and if you're reading, the Hebrew, Nechama, that it's about war. And it brings to my mind the lesson really that a lot of people in the world learned only for the most part in the 80s, starting in 1986 with the publication of Art Spiegelman's first volume of Mouse, the idea that comics, which of course he spells with an X to differentiate it from lighthearted ones, is can be really serious business and can convey very difficult ideas. So I've heard you say that Spiegelman was also an inspiration for you. And how so?
Well, I know it's a question that many times I'm asked who are my influence and who I was influenced by, which artists, and people guess that Hergé is one of them, and one of them because of my style, and it's true. But I think an influence of on artists is you can be influenced not only by style of drawing or writing, but also just by the idea. For me, being as an influential I got from my art speaker was that that comics can be a tool to say to it's not it's a very it has a lot of possibilities that I can speak about everything that I want through this medium, that it's not necessarily cute things, funny strips in newspapers, children comics. It can be anything that I want it to be. And so and Mouse was published I think in the 80s, and I exposed it in 1990. It was quite, I don't remember exactly the date that it was published, but it was already published in Raw magazine, and it was also a creation of Art Spiegelman and Françoise Mouly. And this was, I think, the greatest inspiration. Besides all these so many artists, wonderful artists that I read and their books since.
It's amazing because Raw magazine, as you said, co-edited by Art Spiegelman and his wife Françoise, is it used to be on the edge, it used to be on the fringe, and now if you go into a large bookstore, you see such large sections devoted to graphic novels and graphic memoirs, and many of them are really serious. So before we talk about your specific storylines, now that since you've shared your screen and people can see your work, I would love you to also explain a little about what we're going to be seeing and how you got there. What's your process physically? I know some people use blue pencils and then trace over it. How do you fill in the colors? Do you do it by hand, watercolors, computer? How do you actually do it?
Well, I think I start by that's the first thing is the idea. So maybe when we speak about tunnel, we speak about how I got the idea and so if it's just speak about the drawing, because first I write a script. First of all, I have the idea, and then I start the research, which usually the idea is something connected to a world of maybe some themes that are connected to this idea. And for example, the property, my second book, that it's about going a grandmother and her granddaughter going to Poland to look for the family property that was lost during the war. And so first I went to Warsaw. I think it was the first thing I did. I started reading about Warsaw and speaking with people about Poland, and because I knew what I knew about Poland was actually just about the Holocaust, which I learned in school, and it's a subject that people speak a lot about it, and we were taught a lot about it, but nobody spoke to me about Poland, and my family came from Poland. So I went to Poland. I went I went to Warsaw. I took pictures. This is a drawing done according to a photo. So I do a research, and the research includes visual research as well as interviews with people and reading books and trying to learn about the subject I'm going to write. And then I write it, which is, writing is is a really huge part of the project of my, that takes a lot of time for me. But I don't have anything to show about writing. No, writing is just, somebody sitting and writing. It's not very interesting. And after I have this full script. I call it a script because it's more or less like a film script with where I write dialogues, but I also write what I'm going to draw, more or less, because it's only for me. It's not like a script that I'm going to share with everyone. So I write it just so that I will understand with how I see it. And then I draw a storyboard for the whole book. It's just and you see, it's very rough. It's not very beautiful. So yeah, I feel a little bit, I don't know to share it, but I'm not trying it to be, nicely drawn or something. It's just, it's like drawing here is like writing. It's because I plan what's going to be in each frame. And this is very important because this is the flow of the story. But also I have to take into consideration, where if it's a big panel, a small panel, and take the text into consideration as well, because it's part of the composition. So if I won't take, if I'm not putting the text inside at this point, then maybe I don't know exactly how much space I have for the drawing. So I make this very rough sketch for the whole book. But you see that in the end, I'm sorry, because I did the storyboard in Hebrew. It means from right to left, but this is a page from the English version. But you see
I didn't even think about that. You have to flip the whole thing.
Yeah, I have to flip
because
everything.
Because of the way that people are reading the comics, it's not just the words in the bubble.
Yeah, then this is not so simple, because it's not just flipping.
Yeah.
Because imagine if you have a car and somebody is driving the car, so if you flip it, so he's driving the wrong side of the road. So there are frames that I have to redraw. But if you have time, I can show a very short, very short film of the storyboard.
Yeah.
Of the process of the storyboard. However, changing it. Because I don't have to draw, beautiful drawings. Then I have the freedom to change. It doesn't take me so long to change, and this is very, very important in comics to the size of the frame or the combination of the frames, because you have the composition of the frame, the composition of the page, the composition of the double spread, and then the composition of the whole scene and the whole book. And this is like this jigsaw puzzle of the frames.
It's also, you're not just writing a story like a short story or a writer or a novelist. You're doing different things at the same time with different senses. You're creating the story intellectually, writing the dialogue, but then you also have to visualize how the reader is going to be reading it. Are they reading across, whether left or right? Are they reading down? I know that sometimes different, one of the techniques is to make one really large panel in the center and then smaller ones around. That's sort of accessories to the action. So you're blocking. It's almost like a theater director. You're blocking where everyone's going to be standing.
Well, it's interesting that you say theater, because, and I'm going to go back to it in soon, but I want to show an example, a beautiful why, and this is part why I love this medium so much. And you mentioned something very important. It means that I to control that. I try to control how to think, how to imagine how the reader is going to read my page, but and it's not, but it's different from a book, and it's different from cinema, because both cinema. I say cinema because cinema is also a combination of text and visual, but both literature and cinema are linear. It's like you control. The director control exactly in each second what and how long you're going to see an image, and in what that's frame by frame, and I don't have this privilege. The time is something, I don't have control of the time. People will look at the frame. Somebody can look at the frame just because it's interesting for him, can look at it over like 15 seconds, or it can look at it like half a second. I can't, and also the fact that you see the whole page at once. And it's so I have to calculate it. If I have a surprise, I will I will put it in I will take to have to turn the page, and then you see it. But even then I don't have, because people, when you take a book to your hand, I just have a book here. So usually when people take a new book to the hand, this is what they do. And they just flip over it. It's literature or text or images, but images are we perceive images much faster than words. So if somebody is going through my book, even like this, just to consider if he wants to buy the book, then he might see the most important frame, and you see that the heroine is going to die or something. So there's a lot of spoilers.
So I read that, I assume this is a page, this image is from your book, The Property, the one that about going to Warsaw.
What I wanted to show, if I can just say, because it's an example of what this medium can do that no other mediums can do, is this page is the grandmother Regina is she's driving she's taking a cab, and she's looking through the windows. She have of the cab. She haven't been in Warsaw since she was 15, and so she's looking through the window, and she sees nowadays Warsaw, but then it turns to a frame of the Warsaw of the past, and also the window is getting bigger. And I don't use any words here, and I think it's very understandable. Without I don't have to explain it. And
universal. And so I read that you hired actors for this particular book.
This is why I when you said about again, I'll show it. When you said theater, because first of all, I think I'm influenced by theater a lot. When the way I'm drawing, it's like, okay, I don't want to go into too details, but yeah. So what I will explain about the process of working with actors, which I think that I'm maybe the only one who's working this way. Well, in comics, you have the text and the image, and what's nice about it is that you can see, it's a combination, something contradiction between the text and the image allows me to show, like subtext. I don't, for example, when Mika is saying fine, her body language says anything but fine. Or when the grandmother say God gives, God takes, she doesn't at all looks sad because about the dead person that she just heard. So I'm using a lot of body language, and in order to do this, I started in Exit Wounds to use people, specific people for specific models for each character. Because I want each character to have a unique body language. And here is an example where it's my father-in-law. He was standing before this taxi driver, so I started. I was asking people I knew, like family members, friends, and this is actually example. This is another example of another comics where wow. You see also my husband and a friend standing for me, and this project this is a project I did for New York Times Magazine. I asked a friend of mine to model for me, and she's an actress. She's a professional actress, and then and she was. This was how it is. I don't know how I didn't think about it, but actors, they have exactly their ability to express themselves with the body. This is the talent. This is the profession to express themselves with body language, with face expressions, and also, they never forget in the character. So when you tell an actor, okay, this is you are 19 years old, if he's wearing a coat, he's wearing it like a 19 years old person. And so I decided to hire actors. I did it first, and I did it in the property, where I hired professional actors. As you see that I took the photos in an apartment, but I dressed the actress more or less like I wanted to draw it. And later, so I just, according to the storyboard, I just took photos of the whole book with actors, and this was like another sketch, another storyboard.
Right.
And then when I went to Warsaw and took photos of the locations that I want to use in the book, and then I'm just putting this together.
And now we see it come to life. That's amazing. I would love to turn to tunnels. You've mentioned the property, and also later I want to ask you about exit wounds. But if you want to, without spoiling the story, some of the surprises, there are so many twists and turns, literally, of course, in the tunnels. Just to those people in the audience who haven't read it, do you want to just explain what the story is about? And also, I'm wondering, as you're talking, have you always been interested in archaeology? Do you know any archaeologists? If so, how did they feel?
Now I know a lot of archaeologists.
Do they come throw eggs at your house? Or
archaeologists come to me now to the field, say, hey, I'm an archaeologist. I was never especially interested in archaeology, especially Israeli archaeology, which is first not so beautiful. And if you compare it, to Egyptian or Babylon or Greece, it's just, very, very boring, just holes in the ground and broken vases. But what happened is that I was looking for an idea for a story, actually. And this is a really good, nice time in life looking for a story. It's just because it makes me really open to people. I'm very friendly. I'm talking to everybody because I don't know where the where the story is going to come from. And it was just a talk with a friend who's a web designer who designed a website for the Israeli Antiquity Department or something, and which reminded me stories that I from the past. It reminded me a guy I knew in art school, that he was a friend of person who was now my husband. So I knew it from my husband, that he and his father were actually looking for the digging for the Ark of Covenant. They did it in the middle of the 80s. They digged in a mountain near Jerusalem in the West Bank for 7 years. The father did it for 7 years, as the son was very young. So at a certain point, the father took his son out of school, and they were doing this crazy thing of this crazy long tunnel in the mountain, which and of course they didn't find anything. And then the intifada broke, and the first intifada started, so it became too dangerous, and they stopped. So at the time when I heard the story, it was like somebody's telling you a story about his crazy family, and it's so funny. And but when in 2013, when I suddenly remembered the story, it was something different. First of all, it sounded like a story, it sounded like Indiana Jones. It sounded like a treasure hunt. It sounded like it has a father, a son, and family is a theme that I really like to explore. So I said, okay, maybe this is a story, but also I asked myself for the first time, why did they do it? Why did they do such a crazy thing? And it's very difficult to dig a tunnel without just by hand, and illegally.
And right, it was in a disputed area.
So the father, he gave my friend a gun when he was 14. He gave him a gun, a pistol, So that when he's going to dig alone, so he could protect his. It is very strange, but
Yes.
I knew the family. I've been in their home many times. It was more or less regular family. No crazy, no more crazy than my family or other family that I knew. And they were not religious. They're not mystical. So it made me think about the connection between Zionism or being Israeli and the old myth, and how strong they are still in our DNA.
Yeah.
You know, we're supposed to, Zionism was a secular movement. It was supposed to throw away all this religious nonsense and start being, building a country for being like all other nations. At the same time, it's based on the myth. This is, maybe we can say, our justification, or the only justification for coming here and doing what we are doing. If there is a justification, it's these old texts. So we cannot throw them away, and they still influence us. And you see, they influence us till now.
You have even some of your most secular characters in the story saying things about your bad guy, the professor, saying, well, it's all really ours anyway because we're Jews, and he's the farthest thing from one of the things that really struck me in Tunnels was that you present unflattering pictures, unflattering portrayals of just about everybody and every group from every side. So you have scholars in academia vying for tenure, willing to practically literally stab each other in the back. You have sibling rivalries. You have religious, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Jews quoting the Bible, and the so-called, we call in Israel in English, the Israeli hilltop youth, and who are staking their claims to different parts of the territories. You also have some unflattering portrayals of your main character, Neely, even.
Yeah.
So, so were you doing this because it's more realistic that way, showing that nobody's perfect? Were you making a political statement?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say that it's just unflattering, because I think at the same time, I like everyone, and I think it shows. Maybe not the bad guy, which I really don't. This is the only one I don't like him, and I don't want to. And even he, there's one scene that I think that I try to understand him. But in general, I'm not. Not unflattering. I would say honest, but honest, ironic also. I'm making fun of everyone because we are because we are not perfect, and because we are not perfect, we are we're making troubles, and it's not only Israelis or Arabs or hilltop youngsters, it's
right.
you're
funny also. You're very funny about a lot of it.
We are a very problematic species, I think. And I want to show it. I want to show what happened when you take all these. I wanted to show how. No, I didn't want a political statement. I think, well, I think you can guess maybe a political opinion from opinions from my book, but I'm not. This is not what my main issue is. I want to make a difference between political opinion and about point of view. And really, what I want to show, people hear so much about Israel and discuss politics so much, and there's so many opinions. We don't. There's many opinions nowadays, even more than when I started writing the book. And I don't think my political opinion is better. Of course, I think it's better, but honestly, it's just another idea, another opinion.
So, what was the reaction?
But I want to show how it is in real life. Yeah. Even though it's an imaginary story, I take all these people, I put them in a very tense situation, in a very limited space, and what happens. And then there's what happens, all the interest, all they try to achieve something. They try to achieve something together. And so on the surface, it's the same target. Like we are, like on the surface, if you ask anyone, even a terrorist, they will say, we want a better world, we want a better life for ourselves, for our children. And this is, but then we have, how do you get there? And how do you get there? This is a problem. And this is, I really crafted it in a way that in the end, when there's the disaster, I try not to spoil it, although I don't believe in spoilers, but the disaster, everybody has some part in this disaster.
Right. Especially the
and
cow.
This is not just to say, but I want to say about this, that it's not that I want to say, no, when people say everybody is to blame, is like saying now no one is to blame. And this is not what I want to say. I'm not blind to this responsibility of me, or of my group, if you want, as for the injustice that being done every day. It's not like I'm trying to say it's nobody's fault because it's everybody's fault. But I want to show how what happens. No, don't know exactly how to say it, but yeah.
Well, you humanize it.
I don't
show these people
judge.
as real characters. So what kind of reactions did you get in Israel, first of all?
Well, actually, in Israel, it was the most simple one. First of all, comics is not taken here so seriously. But also I think maybe it's because people who read my book in Israel, usually they have more or less, agree with me. Mm-hmm. I don't say it is a good thing, but this is Israel is so divided. The groups are so divided that even literature or art is divided to groups. And I got some, bad critics from one. Maybe again, I don't know. Maybe I just don't know. Maybe there were many people who were very angry about the book but didn't tell me, and just didn't bother to write me about it. But I got one bad critic. I don't know if it's bad, but angry critic in a very right-wing magazine. But I have to say I wasn't even insulted so much, because I understood by reading the critic that the review, that the one who wrote it, he didn't read. I don't believe he read the book. I think he read the article that was published about it, the interview with me. He was arguing with me with what I was saying in the interview, and not so much about what I was saying in the book.
That does happen.
But the book got really nice reactions, and abroad it was again, most people are mostly civilized, so usually they come to you when they like what you do. It is not so common that people come to you and say, "Oh, I hated your book." You don't know.
So I have one tiny question. Why is her young son, the main character's young son, named Doctor? Is that like an in-joke because you're from a family of doctors?
Yeah. It's an in-joke. It was when my nephew was born, and he was actually he's a model for the kid in the book. When my nephew was born, my sister said, "I'm going to call him Doctor, because if he will be a bad pupil, then the teachers would have to say, Dr. Samocha, please be quiet." So I still call him Doctor, even though nobody, even not his parents, but I still call him Doctor, and I like, I like.
That's very cute. I knew there had to be a reason. So we'll get back to tunnels in a little while. I wanted to ask you about some of your other works. Exit Wounds. I don't know what the Hebrew title is. You can explain to us. It really struck me, your description. I heard you describe it recently as coming from the phenomenon that when a bullet enters a body, it doesn't necessarily exit the body in the same place, in the same trajectory. And that and this book is about the Intifada, about the Palestinian uprising, and the violence, and the whole idea of wounds that we don't necessarily can't necessarily always see where they came from. So
Yeah.
why did that concept of that bullet and the exit wound, why did that speak to you? What were you trying to say with that?
Yeah, more or less what you were saying, that we have these wounds that we carry with us. That and you know this bullet, a bullet, it actually when the bullet is entering the body at certain point, but then it can circle in through the whole body, doing damage, and then going out in a different place, or maybe not even going out of the body. And we carry this. So the fact that we are wounded from some reason, and then it makes us react or do things, you know, in a completely not connected to the trauma itself. If I can be political, very political, although I don't know if this is that I come example.
Sure.
It's like the Holocaust trauma, and what and how Israelis treats the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, for example. For the Palestinians, it's not what they did. They're not connected to the Holocaust at all. You know, it's not. It has nothing to do with them. They were not they were not involved. They were not responsible. Everyone agree about it, but they pay for it. They pay for the Holocaust. Most than any other nation. And but you can't erase this trauma. You know, you can't ignore it. You can't ignore this wound. This is just, you know, I don't. Maybe it's an extreme example, but because it's, of course, it was personal, you know, personal traumas. It's again, you know, I believe that there's not such a difference in, you know, individual and a group of people, like a nation, or no, a family. If there is a personal trauma. Somebody lost his, he lost his mother in an early age, and then he, you know, he might be, you know, very doing. No, we know it. We know this. We mean, you know, people. We know
It also
psychology.
it's
Yeah.
not only about violence. It also speaks to what you were saying earlier about the meaning that stories, or we could call them myths, have for people. And so it's not only the terrible ones, it's not only the traumatic
Yeah,
ones that form our characters,
I agree.
but it is these things that become sort of calcified, these myths that become our factual stories, and then we use those to interact with other people, whether or not they come
Yeah.
from their perspective. It
Yeah.
is it's sort of in the same vein. On a lighter note,
I think most Tana is the subject of the story.
Right.
Of the story is very important. It's a family story, or either it's a personal story, or if it's a nation story, very old story, a new story. The stories is what makes us. The stories that we tell about ourselves, and it's very difficult to change the story.
Yeah. And, you know, not to make too archaeological a pun, but I was thinking tunnels has many layers. You know, you have the national story, the religious issues, you have the family relations. So on a lighter note, as I was saying, can you tell us a little bit about Maya the Messy Eater and how that fits into your whole body of work?
Just a second, I'll find it. Okay. Yeah. Because I do also children books, and Maya Makes a Mess is a children comics I did, short comics I did for children, about this girl this is the Hebrew version, that she eats it, so it's from right to left, and she doesn't eat well. You know, she doesn't eat politely. She does all the mistakes on the table, the family dinner, and her father says so. And the parents said, "Don't do that, don't do that." And then she said, "Why? Who needs all these manners?" And father said, "What will you do if the Queen of England will invite you to Buckingham Palace?" And this is exactly what my father used to tell me when I was a girl, and exactly what I told my daughter. This gave me the idea for the story. And what happened is that she's actually invited to the Queen to Buckingham Palace, to this fancy dinner. where she eats as she used to eat,
Of
pasta
course,
with
they give her
pesto.
spaghetti.
But in the story, she makes everyone, free and for manners like hers. So she convinced everyone to try it. So it her triumph. It is her triumph because everybody is eating like without, with bad manners, especially the queen, and yeah, and so it's again, it's like a joke, expanded joke, but it was really fun to do it,
Through the
and
eyes of children. They're teaching the grown-ups how to behave, right? What's really
yeah,
important and what's
but
not so
but
important.
also, yeah, where parents are sometimes stop me because the book was quite popular in Israel, and then the parents are still stopping me on in the street to say, "Oh, you wake us, you get such a trouble that you gave us," and I
Uh-huh.
say, "Okay, tell your kids that the queen says that it's only allowed on certain." Certain events, and very yeah, you say it,
That's
חגיגי,
very smart.
celebrate, and celebrate something,
So
not just celebrate.
I'm looking at the Hebrew speech bubbles here, and I'm thinking I'm turning to a couple of audience questions. I want to remind the audience, please put your questions into the Q&A at the bottom, and all my students out there would love to hear from you. So somebody asked, in terms of the speech bubbles, whether you thought about the fact that, I guess, in the Hebrew version of tunnels, this person has seen, and he wants to know, did you give any thought to having the Palestinian characters in tunnels speak in Arabic? Or I guess maybe put it side by side so that it would be more authentic. Although I have to say, when they're speaking to the Israelis, they're probably speaking Hebrew to them anyway.
Yeah.
Do graphic novels have any tradition, he asks, or conventions regarding subtitles, I guess, translating within the story?
Well, I actually, I really struggled with this question. In the property, I had the same problem because it's in Poland and people speak in Hebrew. The Israelis speak Hebrew between themselves. The Poles speak Polish, and then when the Poles and Israelis speak, they speak English. So I presented it. I really didn't know how to show it, and then I used the three kinds of fonts, three fonts. And when Israeli were with Poles and didn't understand, it was like, just gibberish. But in tunnels, most of the time most of the people, they speak Hebrew. Again, the Palestinians, they speak Hebrew with the Israelis because this is a sad fact that Palestinians, that a lot of Palestinians know to speak Hebrew quite well, but very, very little Israelis can speak Arabic. And but in tunnels, I felt, yes, it's also a political question, but also so something sometimes that I wanted the brothers to speak and the Israeli wouldn't understand, and between them they speak Arabic. So how to represent, and then I tried to put it in Arabic, and then to put the text, the translation, and in the bottom of the panel. I tried several things, but actually it ruined the comics, it ruined the frame. And in the end, I said, okay, I just ignore it. I ignore it. People will understand. It's not that I'm saying that everybody speaks Hebrew necessarily. Just, it's not important. It's not that important. It's more important that people could read easily the story.
This is I think, a common problem that translators have when there is a line in the book that is not in the majority language of the book. So they deal with it, as my students and I have discussed. Hillel Halkin, one of the best known translators from Hebrew and from Yiddish to English.
Yeah.
He dealt with it by when there was a Yiddish short story that quotes a phrase in biblical Hebrew, he transliterates, he writes the biblical Hebrew phrase in English letters, doesn't translate it there, and then has a glossary, at the end of the book explaining what it is. But that is hard, as you're saying, that's hard to do with a graphic novel.
Yeah, and actually, this is, I think, one of the most difficult languages to translate to Hebrew is Yiddish, because it has some similarities, but it's not the same language. So sometimes it's the same, and sometimes it's the same words, but they mean something different. So this is a problem, because there are some similarities in the languages. I decided that in the end, I tried many things, and in the end I decided to say, okay, it's too complicated, just leave it like this. And give myself the freedom to, yes, because for me, the most important is the story will be very readable. And
so we have a couple of technical questions from people. One person asks, when do you use digital tools and when do you use watercolor? What are some advantages? And then, and she says, I love your color choices. And so do I. And then related, another person asks what programs you use to create the storyboard on your computer. So that whole process.
For this book, I used only digital. I used Photoshop, I used Procreate in the iPad. I didn't use any. I did some versions, for watercolor versions of the book, but just for for fun. The book was done digitally from the first, from everything was done on the computer. I use the computer. I draw on the computer for really so many years. I think from the 90s already. I like it. I like to explore a computer. Computer is not actually a technique. It's many techniques, and you have to invent the techniques. It's different because it's different for many reasons. I can speak. I can give an whole lecture just for the difference of using computer for drawing advantages and disadvantages. I think the fact that I drew before I started working on the computer, I drew in many techniques. It helped me a lot to understand how to find my own way to work with a computer. I think this is the danger of the computer, if I can say danger, is that it's a machine. It's detached from us. It's not, if I, for example, fill in color with paint bucket, red in certain opacity, and any other person do it, it's the same. When I use watercolor, it will never, when I draw with watercolor, it will never be the same like anyone else. So I try to find ways to personalize the computer. But lately I came back to watercolors and really enjoy it. And I think it's important to use both to understand color. Color is very important tool in my work, and it's a storytelling tool for me.
Yeah, well, what you did when you showed us the frame, the panels in Warsaw, I was noticing when the older woman, if you can show, when she's looking out, when she's looking out the window at current day Warsaw, and everything's in color, and then she's looking out the window and she inside the taxi is still in full color, but the window frame, everyone's in black and white because it was when she was little. And that's brilliant.
Yes,
that's really brilliant.
Yeah, I was using, I don't even say, because I was actually using a cliche, the cliche of
that people were black and white.
Of the sepia as
right.
But I'm using it as this a cliche because I want it to be very communicative. Because I was doing something that maybe it's little difficult to understand because I'm changing times inside the frame, and if I would do it we would have done it in color, maybe it will be a little bit people might not understand. I don't even but but for example, I'll share again. Sorry, just for because I want to say something about the color. Here, for example, this is again a flashback in the property, but here I used colors deliberately, but not only color, but very vivid color, because what I wanted to say, yeah, it's a memory, but it's a very vivid memory, and sometimes the memories from our youth are more maybe we remember them more colorful than even our everyday life. So the color,
Right.
I'm trying to give this impression. Again, I don't know. It's not that I don't think I don't know if anybody notice it or understand it, but I think that the feeling is there.
Right. That's really fascinating. So I have a question from one of my students, Lucia Fischel, who asks, would you ever consider collaborating with a Palestinian author? Are you interested in writing more Palestinian characters and storylines?
First of all, it depends on the story, but as for the question, I will explain why. First of all, I would really be happy to, but it's more problematic than you might think. I think like 10 years ago or something like this, maybe more, I was contacted by a Palestinian author, Israeli Palestinian author, very good one, Ala Khalkhal. He lives in Haifa. And he asked me if I want to collaborate. I think maybe it was done, I think the connection was through his agent. He has an Israeli agent, a Jewish Israeli. And I read his stories. She sent me his book, his stories. I really liked it. It was very colorful, very imaginative, a little bit surrealistic, a combination of surrealism, realism, which I like also. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's do a book together. And then he got a really a big prize in from the Arab literature prize. And then he told me that he doesn't want to do the project because if he is going to collaborate with me, he will be ruined in the Arab world. Nobody will publish him. Nobody will buy his books. He's going to be boycotted. And I had to respect it. It doesn't mean that I accept it. I respect it, but but for me, it's very sad. I know this in general, I don't believe so much in boycotting. I think it's we lose a lot. We lose more than we win with boycotting. And I think I know why it's good also. Okay, I understand the reasons, but personally, from my experience, I can say that I was boycotting the West Bank for many years. I didn't go there. I didn't go there for I think 25 years. And I told everyone, I will go there only with a passport. When I have I'll go there with the Israeli. When I have to use a passport to go there, I'll go there. I won't go there.
Meaning you didn't want to go there while it was under occupation.
Yeah. And then because I thought it would be normalizing the situation. And then I started writing tunnels, and I had to go there because I wrote about it. I had to speak with people. I had to see the place. I had to see the landscape. I wanted to see what I'm going to write about, not just through the lens of someone else. So I went there for a couple of times, and I found out that it was a mistake that I didn't go, because it is very important to go. Now I think it's very important to go. It's very important to go and to see it to go there, even for 4 or 5 visits. Not that I think that I'm an expert in the West Bank now, but to go there, to see with my own eyes things. And I didn't see, any conflicts with just I didn't see. I saw every day. Just nothing happened. No, it's not like every day there's something. I went. I just saw. Just to see it, I understood so many things. I understood so many things about the occupation, and I felt it was a mistake that I didn't go. I felt that I had when I go, it's like I read it in some book of American author. She said, "I'm not judging. I'm giving the. I'm. It's not as an author. It's not my duty to judge. My duty is to show the evidence, and the reader can be the judge. And just I wanted to to see the evidence, and I saw it with my eyes. I saw it with my opinion, with through the lens of my opinions, my point of view, my beliefs. But still, I think it was very, I learned a lot from it. And
Do you want tunnels to be translated into Arabic and marketed somehow among Palestinians?
I wish. Again, it's not so easy. The property is supposed to be published by an Egyptian publisher, but he lives in Paris, but he is interested. It still didn't. It wasn't published yet. But yes, I think it's important. I think it's important for me to read Arab authors, Palestinian authors and poets. Just because just to understand my neighbor.
To hear someone else's voice.
Sorry.
So someone had a great question. Do you see any of your books being made into animated films? Especially Tunnels, because it's such an adventure story. It's also a human.
Sorry, I spoke so much. And I lost my voice.
I would offer you my water, but
yeah, I forgot to bring water.
Here.
Studio. Wow, I really lost my voice. I'm not necessarily animation. The property, my sister. Wow, what happened? My sister, I have a younger sister. She's a script writer, and she's trying to.
She's not a doctor? I thought everybody has to be a doctor.
No, my older sister is a doctor. She's like, okay. How do you say it? Angus Verdi? I don't know. This is a sheep that was sacrificed.
Right.
Parents.
Yeah. Right. She's a sacrificial lamb.
She's a scientist and a doctor, a very good one. It's very good to have a doctor in your family. She was a pediatrician. It's very, very valuable for us. My younger sister is a scriptwriter and an actress, and she's trying now to make to make the property into a film.
Oh,
quite advanced. Maybe we're going to. The COVID ruined the plans and now we were supposed to shoot to film in Ukraine.
Oh,
so
great.
Now this is also a problem. But I believe it will happen. But it's not an animated film. It's a regular motion picture.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. So she's taking the storyline, but not the idea of graphic.
And Tunnels is now, there is and the Israeli director who just started adapting Tunnels into to television series, but again, not animation. We'll see.
Really interesting.
But by myself, I'm not interested to do it. I'm happy with comics. I'm really happy.
You don't want to be the. No. So I'm wondering before I get to my last question, I'm wondering what your next project is. You've been so successful with all of these. Are you working on something already?
Wow. I after Tunnels, I took a year off. It was the first time in my life. I took a year off from creating. I taught still in the academy, but I didn't know, and I didn't even think about the project. What is my main next project going to be? For a year, I just read books, cooked, being with my family. It was a pleasure. And then I started doing this. I now I have a small exhibition in New York City in Chelsea, I worked in a gallery, and I worked for half a year, about half a year for this exhibition. And now I'm doing another project with a film director, but I'm still not doing a book of my own. I don't have an idea. I'm waiting for an idea to come. I'm waiting
Well,
for the yeah to
while you're
the
waiting,
telegram.
do you want to tell us what the name of the gallery is? So if anybody's listening and is in New York City and wants to see your
It's the
exhibition,
Philippe Labon, and well,
in you said in Chelsea or
in Chelsea.
in
Yeah,
Chelsea?
maybe I'll put it in the chat or in
Yeah, that would be great.
live
I
chat.
know I
And
would love to see. So I've we've time for I have one more question for you. I was really struck by the profound afterword that you wrote at the
yeah,
end of Tunnels. You really reflected a lot on the creation of fiction, and you wrote. I'll quote. Of course, this is from the English translation. You wrote that you learned that that facts are not always right, that even numbers, quoting you, even numbers uh, cannot be totally counted upon. They too, we have discovered, can be powerful tools in the hands of interested parties who throw up one graph or another our way. In this confusing state of affairs, it seems that the only object that can claim total honesty is fiction itself. And then skipping to where you talk about bring in archaeology, and you talk about sort of the materiality and the vulnerability of these artifacts that can be broken and lost, like the Ark of the Covenant that your story is about. And you contrast that, like you say here, with fiction, with stories that are
yeah.
portable and that also create a way for people to talk to each other. So just in we have about a minute or two left before I wrap things up. Do you envision your contributions as being able to help the situation, to give something for people to say to each other, to create a dialogue through your stories?
Okay. Wow, it's a question. Well, I'm a very I don't think I'm a great believer. I don't say in the power of art to change, like immediately things. And I will give you an example. Again, I'm sorry that all my examples are from World War II, but
Happens.
in not World War II, but there is a book, a very good book called "Nothing New in the West," who was published in 1929 in Germany. And this book it's a very good one. It also made into a very good film in the 60s, I think. And the book is about the First World War in Germany, and all this, how terrible, how terrible and stupid it was. A very, very strong book about how the generation of young Germans just, lost their lives because of these stupid ideas of the German Empire. And this book was a bestseller in Germany in 29. I think 5 million people bought it. It was, everybody wrote it. It was like a very, very successful book, published in 29. So I think I don't have to explain, what I wanted to say. Having said that, I think that art has a great power to change, but we have to be patient because it's like very, very small steps. I think there's hardly, I don't think the people change their opinion. This is again going back to opinion and point of view. No, I don't think I ever tried to change my life because I argue with someone about political argument. I had a political argument with someone that I changed maybe I changed something. I didn't change my political opinions because of an argument or because somebody told me his opinion. But what I am, my political opinions, but and everything else, my identity is so much influenced by the art that I, by stories, by movies, by books, by drawings, by art, by people created now or 500 years ago or 4,000 years ago.
Mhm.
I think this is amazing, and I think this is a great tool, and I think it's important. Maybe sometimes I feel, I'm like a bug, small bug. It's so difficult to make to make one book. It took me so much effort, and I don't know if people will read it or it will change anything. But it's like voting, maybe, or maybe not a bug. Maybe we can think about like voting. When you vote, actually, it doesn't important if you vote. It's just one vote. It wouldn't change everything. But when everybody votes, it changes everything. Yes.
That's very good to remember. So
So
with
I
you,
try to think about it like this, like
right,
very, very small steps,
frame by frame.
frame by frame. Yeah.
Yeah, Rutu, thank you. Thank you so, so much. You're so
Thank you.
eloquent and you're so talented, and really, I think you've created for yourself several dozen new fans today.
Thank you
So
very
I
much.
want to thank you
I
so
really
much.
enjoyed it today.
I want to thank everybody for joining us, and to remind you all that 10 days from now, on the 31st of March, we have our next Israeli author conversation. We'll hear from short story writer Ayelet Sabari. And so please join us for that as well. And if you have friends who missed this wonderful conversation and they would like to see it and hear it, please send them the link that you will get. So thank you, and stay safe and enjoy the day. And
I just
Tov, Laila Tov to you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.